Today we are going to, after we talk a little bit about what we did last month, we are going to talk about men and abortion healing. There's so much to talk about, and we're excited to share some information with you, some things we're rolling out here at Support After Abortion. So I'm glad you're here. At the end, as always, we will take questions, comments, so forth and so on. We ask you to put those in the chat, and Support After Abortion team members will then help present those to myself and the guest we have today. And if you want, while we're getting rolling and letting everybody get in, you could go ahead and jump in the chat and let us know where you're from. We love seeing that. People from all over coming together for the same purpose, the same cause. Very cool. Let's see, we're about 3 minutes after. Lots of folks from all over. Seeing a lot of familiar faces. Some of you have jumped off to the other screen. Anybody in the Midwest where I'm at? Having this crazy kind of stuff happening? It was 30 degrees yesterday. It's 65 and sunny today. If you're like me and you're from the area, then you just absolutely love and live for the Midwest Springs, right? Sunny in a tank top and snow at midnight. All right, I see Scott. I see Tim. Ron's on here somewhere. Bowling Green. I was just down there at Horse Cave. All right. Again, when you come in, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself and just dropping us a note in the chat where you're from. A lot of people doing so. Love seeing people from all over the country, all over the world. We got people from everywhere. We still have people flowing in, Ivy.
I think we can go ahead and get started. I'll keep admitting.
Okay. Awesome. So again, thank you all for being here. My name is Greg Mayo. I'm the men's healing strategist for Support After Abortion. I also chair the men's national task force. Support After Abortion is a 501c3 nonprofit. We work with over 800 agencies to provide research-centered, options-based care to men and women impacted by abortion loss. Options-based healing opportunities provide a pathway for men and women to break free from guilt, shame, condemnation, and other painful emotions. And we do that in a collaborative way, like I said, with over 800 agencies. We're happy you're here for this Healing Provider webinar we do once a month. And so last month, in case you missed it, we had Father Sean Moynihan on. He joined us to discuss the difference between emotional and spiritual healing. We learned that the vast majority of abortion healing programs are faith-based, and our estimates, y'all, is about 95%. We also learned that the vast majority of people looking for healing don't want faith-based. Remember, 73% of women and 57% of men rarely or never attend church, according to our study. And so of the 22 million men and women that would seek or benefit from help, 17 million of them won't receive it because programs aren't available to meet them where they are. That was the crux of what we talked about last week. And Father Sean explained that we as providers, as Christians that are providers, that we can show Jesus without mentioning Jesus. And we do that by being Christ-like, by loving the broken, and most importantly, meeting them where they are. So that was a great, great session with Father Sean. If you didn't get a chance to attend, jump on over to supportafterabortion.com. You can get a blog post that is the crux of the session, and I would love for you to have a chance to learn from the wisdom that Father Sean shared with us. This month, we are talking about men and abortion healing. And I'm excited to talk about this. Now, as a man in the abortion healing strategist, one may say I'm biased, but I still think it's a great topic. And I want to open up by sharing a quote, a part of a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, because every time I see this quote, and it's a very popular quote, it's on posters and boardrooms and things like that. And every time I see it, every time I hear it, it makes me think about the healing journey. And so here's part of this quote. Roosevelt said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails by daring greatly." This, to me, sums up men in abortion healing. It's waist deep in the muck and the mud, shoulder to shoulder, walking with men. And this month, we're going to be talking about that. In order to do that, we're going to share some data from the men's research paper, which comes out next week. So y'all be looking for that. It'll be available on our website. And we also have a special guest on the show sorry guys, I used to do a podcast. I apologize. We have a guest in our session today, Scott Beyer. Scott's a friend of Support After Abortion. He's a great partner of Support After Abortion. He is the CEO of Community Pregnancy Clinics in Florida. Also serves on the Support After Abortion Men's Task Force. We'll get to know Scott a little bit more in a few minutes. After talking to Scott a little bit and going over some questions I have for him, we're going to invite two friends of mine, Ron and Tim Jones, Ron Ransom. They are gentlemen I have walked through part of the recovery journey with, and they're going to share a little bit about their story and how abortion healing impacted their life. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And then we'll open it up for questions from all of y'all. You can put your questions in the chat, and we have team members here that will be able to get to the questions and get them to us, whether it's for myself or Scott or Tim or Ron. So, but let's talk a little bit about the white paper before I bring Scott on. The white paper, like I said, comes out Monday, and it's a men's research paper that Support After Abortion commissioned. And when we talk about men in abortion, I think we first need context, and that context comes from this white paper and the results that we found. So a little bit of data on that. According to our study, 45% of men said that they had no voice or no choice in the abortion decision that they were a part of. Now, another 57% said that they didn't make the decision. So that's a lot of guys that either didn't have a voice or didn't make the decision at all. And that's important when we look at the next data set, which is 71% of men reported adverse changes in themselves after the abortion. Y'all, that's almost 3/4 of men had an adverse change in themselves and their emotions after the abortion experience. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Not that it wasn't already. 83% tried to find help or said that they could have benefited from help from talking to someone. 83%. But only 18% were aware that help was even available, that agencies existed like us, like pregnancy centers, like groups that help men heal. 82% didn't know there were any such places. Now, and the other thing I want to share about the white paper and the results we found, when we talk about, kind of tying back into what we talked about last week, guys, 43% of respondents identified as either atheist, agnostic, or having no religion at all. So we're having trouble getting the healing to the guys that need it because we're not going to where they need or to where they're at. Okay. So that's just a little bit of context about the white paper. I kind of want to mention a little bit of it. So I wanted you to have a little context going into this conversation, but also I want you to be aware it's coming. It's coming next week, and I can't wait for y'all to see it and be able to share your feedback. So with all that background, I want to bring Scott on. Scott, you can unmute yourself. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, Greg. Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
I really appreciate you being here and taking the time out to share with us. Can you briefly just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I am now the CEO of Community Pregnancy Clinics. We are one of the oldest in the country, the biggest in the state of Florida system of pregnancy resource centers, serving all the way from Naples up to Gainesville at the University of Florida. Quick background, I had time in the seminary prior to this, time in the Army, and 23 years in education, and just found myself asking God that fateful question, what do you want me to do? What's your will? And within a few months of asking that question, this opportunity came up. So I'm fairly new to the space, to the pro-life space. I've always been pro-life, but never this active. And now as CEO, I'm learning a lot in the last couple of years. I'm coming into my third year coming up. So it's amazing how time flies, but just really immersing myself in the world of pro-life, and specifically here, the topic today with support after abortion for both men and women.
Wow, thanks for that. And that's a wide and varied career, and it's amazing how God's brought all that together and using it now in your position. So that's super cool. But let me ask you, Scott, before you stepped into the pregnancy center world, what was your opinion when you thought about men and abortion?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there was some tension. I had my own interactions. I don't have my own abortion experience directly, but someone very close to me, actually in my family, did early on in his life. And I was around that. I saw the pain, I saw the suffering. So I saw this on the ground floor. Then I would hear that, hey, men usually, want the abortion. They force their partners into the abortion. Other myths that they don't really get affected by it because it's, the euphemism of my body, my choice for women. So men just kind of, I thought, abdicated their role willingly. But again, that was in tension to what I saw with people in my own life who were directly experiencing abortion. So that conflict has I've come to realize what the myth is. The myth is that, that men aren't affected by abortion. And we know men are wounded. Men and women, right? We're not neglecting or negating the pain of women, but this male role is, I think, often misunderstood, and it's really now just coming to the surface thanks to groups like Support After Abortion.
And so now when you think about men and abortion, and you think about the role they played and where they might be afterwards, from the standpoint of where you're at in the pregnancy center world, right? As a CEO of a large organization, how does that different understanding now sort of impact goals and how you see men and maybe men that come into your clinic with their ladies? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to be more intentional, right? Because we are in a female-dominated world, usually in the pregnancy clinic world. So when I came in, there were 0 other males in my organization. And again, this is the state of Florida. We have 7 clinics, except for my predecessor, who was a male. So I think this is a great opportunity to look for not only men who have experienced abortion, because I know healed people want to help people. So there's a huge opportunity out there right now for men who have experienced an abortion to engage them, to help them find healing, and then help them help other people. So that's a great thing. And I think the other area here is prior to the abortion, obviously we're trying to help women and men not choose abortion, right, as we're life-minded. So as much as we can, if you have a pregnancy resource center out there, I hope you're inviting the partner, the male partner, into the counseling room, because there's still time, right? They just need a voice. They need to be told that they have a voice. And as I'm sure you'll share more of, women want to hear the male say simply, I'm here for you. And if that one phrase can be said, it doesn't mean they have to get married, doesn't mean they're going to spend, the rest of their life together even. I'm here for you to walk with you through this, is what we're telling women. And if the male partner can say those words, we're going to save a lot of babies, and we're going to bring a lot of healing, and we're going to prevent abortions, hopefully.
That's a great point. And so in the time you've been in your position, you mentioned there were 0 men, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning when you stepped in just a couple, 3 years ago. So has that changed now as far as men volunteers and working within your organization?
Yeah, it's a working process. It's a work in progress. I've hired a few employees from the development side who just happen to be males, that they just happen to be available. I am now encouraging them and actually requesting that they kind of take part in some of the training that Support After Abortion provides, so that they can get immersed in the world. But finding male volunteers is tough, and that's one of the problems, one of the opportunities we have, right, to find more males. And I'll tell you, a lot of times I'll even talk to pastors who, my other big thrust is, how do we get churches engaged and involved in this world of pro-life? And we know the data shows only 3% nationally in America of Christian churches are active in the pro-life space. So we have a huge obstacle, or a huge opportunity, as I always try to put it. So, but these pastors will say, well, I really can't get involved. I don't want to promote pro-life too much because I'm compromised. They might have their own abortion story, and they feel that they're not ready, or even the right persons to do it. And I'm telling them, no, you're just the person to do it. You have a story. And if you have healing, you need to share that, because that's what we're all about, is sharing healing. And so, yeah, that's one of the obstacles. Many men feel they're not equipped, even if they have healed from the abortion experience. They don't feel equipped, or they don't know where to turn for training and guidance.
So in light of what you just said about your experience with men and male volunteers, can you, with that in your mind, speak a little bit to the data I shared from our study about men?
Yeah, so the one that jumps out from the white paper, 82% of men are not aware of what's available to them. And that's probably for male. I think male and female is pretty similar, because I've heard 80% as well for female. But so these are men and women who want help, who would seek it or would take it if they could find it. They just don't know where to go. And from the pregnancy clinic world, this is also, again, I say for women, they're not aware of what's available to them in their own areas. Right. So one of our goals is to connect them to the resources that are available, and then we can address some of their needs or some of their reasons why they're even contemplating abortion. So now, Support After Abortion for men, these are men who felt like they didn't have a voice, and again, as the white paper shows, the majority, right, this is a significant majority of men were not forcing the abortion, right? They were felt like, they believed the euphemism of my body, my choice. They told the woman what they felt they wanted to hear, rather than what they were feeling inside. And that's part of the pain afterwards, because an emasculated man who hasn't expressed his voice, similar to Adam in the garden, he was there. Yeah, the Bible doesn't say he was absent. He was there and he didn't speak. And so that weight of that burden that many men have experienced, I think that's something important for us to be able to help them heal through. We had a couple just not too long ago in one of our clinics here in Florida, and they came in for a second time, because the first time they had chosen abortion, unfortunately, as a married couple, 19 years old. And I'll never forget, because I wasn't in the counseling room, but I did see them walking to the car after the visit, holding hands, in tears. And they basically told each other, I thought you wanted me to get the abortion last time. And then the male said to the female, I thought you wanted me to tell you that you should get the abortion. They hadn't communicated it. So we got to remember, our clients are mainly 18 to 24-year-olds. They don't have a whole lot of life experience. They're not polished in communication skills, right, with each other, with the significant others. And so we have people, they're basically children, young people who are not equipped to make this kind of decision, especially given the false information out there from the left that's kind of encouraging them. This is what you got to do. There's no other way, no other option. So again, a lot of opportunity here for the especially pregnancy resource clinics, but for all people, because everybody knows somebody who has had an abortion. That's something that we can guarantee on this call.
Yep. And so in light of all that, and that's interesting to tie in with Adam. So this seems to have been part of the male condition from the very beginning, right? The sort of apathetic non-action. But when we think about that, as you tied it together to the abortion world now with men and that same sort of apathy and not speaking up, and then we look at what our study shows, and then we look at the amount of men that come to the clinics, which isn't a lot, and as far as volunteers and whatever. And I just wonder, when we swirl all that together, how do you think we solve that? How do you think we get more men in the clinic? Because I'm just wondering, Scott, and you tell me, now this is your world, but if a guy comes in with his girlfriend, wife, whatever, into one of your clinics,
Mhm.
don't you think there's a huge difference in impact on this young man or older man? I don't know, I'm not judging that, but on this guy, if he has a man to talk to there as opposed to a woman or a video put in, do you think that connection is a little bit different?
Yeah, I think that's, I'm just recently coming to the realization that ideally it's a male to male situation here. Obviously, that's usually going to be better, but I think there's some value in even the female. So if a clinic like ours doesn't have a whole lot of males, I know some out there, I see some people on the call here, and there's the kind of the man cave that they bring them in and maybe play video games elbow to elbow, and they're kind of just, there to talk to them while the maybe the partner is in the ultrasound room. Eventually it's important to bring them back all together for the counseling. But this idea that, a female can't talk to a male, I think there's value in a female talking to the male, because there's something about a male feels he'll never be forgiven. And if partner's not going to forgive him, well, here's this other woman, and maybe it's a nurse, maybe it's an RDMS, ultrasound tech, or somebody, a counselor, who says, you know what, you can be forgiven. And a woman saying that to a male, I think has a tremendous impact. So what I want to negate, I think, is we have to deal with what we have. And so I have mainly women talking to males now in the clinics, and it's working. It does help, but then to give them resources, whether you're a pastor or a priest in the confessional, we want to be able to give these people resources that they can not only say, hey, you're forgiven, but here's some resources to be healed, because we can repent of our sins, we know from our faith, but you can't really repent from your wounds. And so this is the opportunity. We have a culture of wounded people who are all looking for help. We just have to find more people to share those resources.
And so what I think I heard from you, and I want to make sure I got it right, because I like the way you said it. So you're saying that an emasculated man in one of your centers would benefit greatly from being validated by a woman in one of your centers.
Absolutely.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, dude. Thank you. So, and we talk a lot about faith, and we talk a lot about faith on this call, and I know most of us are Christians. But I want to talk for a minute about the 40% of men who said they don't want a religious approach, or said they want a religious approach. I'm sorry. So there's 60% of men who don't. So let's talk about, can we serve the men who don't want a religious approach, and can we meet them where they're at in the context of a pregnancy center? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is huge, I think, because again, any program, whether it's Support After Abortion or Rachel's Vineyard, all the great programs out there that are faith-based, we have to realize, I think it's St. Ignatius said, we have to go through someone else's door before we try to bring them through our door. And that means meeting them where they're at. So there's not one program that's going to be right for everybody, right? So there are programs among programs. Well, let's create options-based programs that will meet the needs of the male or female. So a lot of times we know from the research, males want anonymity, and they want virtual often at the beginning. It doesn't mean later they wouldn't be ready for a 3-day healing retreat. There's some great programs out there, but generally what we're finding, and is what you're sharing here, is that that's not right away at the entry point. Just like a woman who comes into our clinics in the crisis mode, pregnancy doesn't have to be a crisis, but it is a lot, for a lot of women and men, the tunnel vision, military background, I get tunnel vision. You're looking at one thing and you can't see the periphery. So even if I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus, I've been saved, right? I believe in Jesus Christ. I need to know that you care for me first. Are you here for me, or are you here to put up a check on the box that you have a new salvation? And I say that challengingly to myself and other clinics out there who are faith-based, but that's maybe not what the person needs. They need care and compassion. We like to say that unless a woman, and I'll share this with men too, a man or woman feels lovable, they're not loveable, right? So we have to be the hands and heart of Christ. Just like Jesus at the well, he didn't, zap the lady with, hey, I'm the Messiah and I got all your answers to all your problems. he just asked some questions and led her into a position that she would be more open to receive what he was giving, which was healing and salvation, but not right away. So I think it's an important topic, because I think it's often mistaken that we have to give them Jesus right away. And for a lot of people, that turns them off, because they're not because they're not Christian. Some are. They're not ready to hear that. They want to get help, and they want to know that you care about them first.
And I think that's a great point. They want to know you care, that you have no agenda, right? That you are simply there to help them. The way I always word it is, I want to help whoever I'm talking to find their path. I am thankful for the place I've come to in my life. I am thankful for the healing I've had and the learnings and all that. But I wouldn't recommend the path I took to anybody. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me. So I think that's a great point. And being able to offer that options-based approach that meets them where they're at. Yeah, it doesn't mean that we never talk about Jesus. What it means is we have an opportunity to show Jesus, just like Father Sean said last month. So I think it's a great point, Scott. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm going to pause the questioning with you for a minute, because I'm going to jump over to my buddy Tim Jones. Tim, you want to come off mute quick? How you doing, brother?
Hi, everyone.
Tim is a friend of mine that I've never met in person, thanks to the world of Zoom and everything else, right? But Tim and I have spent a lot of time together, and Tim has an interesting story about how abortion healing has impacted him. And I thought him sharing a little bit of that story would bring some great value to all of you in the work that you do. So Tim, I'll let you take it away, my man.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey, 36 years old. Pretty good childhood, mother, father together, and older sister, big family, outside of that. And I was, born and raised in the Catholic Church, always went to church, always heard about, how abortion was wrong. But I had to learn, everything my own way, so got into my teen years and already was having self-confidence issues. And I started, dating and typical high school drinking, smoking cigarettes, the whole deal. And so in my early 20s, I ended up getting a girl pregnant, and I was in a good period in my life. I was just coming out of my shell from my teen years, because my teen years were rough. So I was just starting to get out and drinking parties on the weekends and stuff like that. But I was functioning pretty normally as a teenager, or into my late teens, early 20s. And then so when I got this girl pregnant, and immediately I rejected it. Immediately, no, this isn't right. This isn't time. I don't love her. I didn't even love myself at that time, but I didn't know that. But went through with the abortion. She was waiting to see what I was going to say. And this is what bothers me, because like you said, a lot of guys didn't have a say. Well, I did, and I swayed the abortion. I'm the one that called it. And immediately when it was done, I felt, I don't want to even say relief, but I guess temporarily, like really, like that day, I felt like this relief that it was done, and I could go about my normal selfish life. And then the next day it hit me so hard. And as I said, I'm a Catholic, so I went to confession right away. I knew it was wrong. I went to confession, but Jesus forgave me, but I didn't forgive myself. And that was just the start. And I believe that allowed evil in my life right then and there, because everything came to a head at that moment. Bad friendships, more alcohol abuse, drugs, worse decisions with picking girlfriends, acting out, just, complete destruction. And thank God I had a good family that was there to carry me through and help me. But my 20s were the darkest years of my life. Things just progressively got worse. The alcohol and drugs just kept getting worse and worse. So once I got into my early 30s, I never mentally grew up. I was still a teenager, and I ended up moving down to Florida, and it was all, I believe the Holy Spirit led me down to Florida to get me away from all the bad relationships and all the destruction that I caused in New Jersey after the abortion. I got immediately involved with Alcoholics Anonymous, started the 12 steps, felt amazing, felt relief, felt good, started to live normally without obsession of drinking. And so then I started going to a church in Fort Myers, and I was in the bathroom one time and I saw a Project Rachel flyer with tabs where you could text a number, and immediately, I remembered my abortion and texted the woman, and she was good. We talked on the phone a little bit, but I didn't think I needed healing like she was talking about, because I went to confession and I'm forgiven, and I'm working on myself in AA now. But she kept persuading me to, I think it was Keys to Hope and Healing. Was that, Greg, what I started, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined that group and I found a lot of relief, just talking about it and just hearing other people's stories, and went through, I think it was like a 6-week program. And then after that, I was like, wow, this is great. I'm healing and I'm good. But then I was offered to do the 12 steps with Greg, and they sent me a book for your book, Almost Daddy. And I didn't think I needed to go that much further with it, because there was still a lot of shame involved. But meeting up, I was like, what, 12? Oh, it was like 15 weeks.
15 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. And every week, I mean, it just, I don't want to say I dreaded it, but initially it was uncomfortable. But once the 12 steps are beautiful. And once I did the steps little by little every week, I can't tell you the healing I experienced. And I had physical pains that left my, I had a stiff neck. It was just all that just tension of stuffing down this situation for so many years. And it was just coming out in all these negative, horrible ways. But the freedom I feel now, I can actually, I feel my soul now. I want to help other people because of how much it has impacted me. And there's so many men that I believe, there's so many people out there that are drinking, doing drugs, and hurting people because they're hurting from having abortions. And it breaks my heart, because I was there. I know what it's like.
So it sounds to me like you're on your 12th step, brother.
Yeah, I'm ready for my 12th step finally,
And for those of you not familiar with the 12 steps, the short version of the 12th step is give it away. The long version is, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we strive to practice these principles in all our affairs and carry this message to others. And that's what Tim's talking about. You find that healing, and then you want to go help other guys find the same thing, right?
Absolutely. And that actually, it's not like we joke around about it in AA. When we meet up with our sponsees, we say, hey, you're actually helping me more than I'm helping you. Like that's a part of the continued healing, because you go through the steps again and again with other guys. It's like you're taking them through, but again, I'm going through the steps again too. It's like, it's maintenance. It's great.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. It reminds me of something Richard Bach wrote, a guy I used to read all the time, who said, "We teach best what we most need to learn." Right. So every time
That's
you go
right.
through the steps, even if it's somebody you're mentoring, right, Tim, you learn something new about yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you see, like, even going through the book, like, if I was taking somebody through your book, I would see something would pop out at me that I didn't notice when I was going through with you, you know, and it's something that I need to hear for that moment.
And I'm just going to validate what you're saying, because I've gone through Keys to Hope and Healing with several groups, and I get something out of it every time, every time. So that's fantastic. Tim, I appreciate you coming on, being
You're
open,
welcome.
being honest, being vulnerable, sharing your story. And for all of you listening, I hope you see Tim's where he's at now, because Tim is committed to the hard work. And we see in what he graciously shared, where he started and where he's gotten to. But the main thing I want you guys to take away and not forget is that, by Tim's own admission, he's still working.
Yeah,
He's still working.
I am.
It's on to the next thing, right?
It's only the beginning. Yeah.
Yep. I think
Only
that's
the beginning.
beautiful. And I appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. We may have
I won't.
questions, but I am
Okay.
going to invite my good friend Ron Ransom on. I know he's on here somewhere. And Tim and Ron know each other. But Ron, where you at, buddy? Hello, Ron.
Ron, you can go ahead and speak.
There he is. How you doing, brother? You're muted, my man.
Oh,
Yeah, I still can't hear you. I got no. Oh, now I see your mute button.
Oh,
Maybe dip out and come back in. All right. While we're waiting for Ron to come back in, I'm going to go ahead and share something. I was going to wait to the end of the share, but if you get our emails from Support After Abortion and whatnot, you may have heard of this thing we're starting called Base Camp. Now, this starts on May 2nd, Tuesday at noon Eastern time, and it will be every Tuesday at noon Eastern time. Okay, you're like, great, Greg, what is it? Well, Base Camp, it's an open forum, weekly discussion group for men who've been impacted by abortion. Now, what do I mean by open forum? Well, each week men will be invited into the conversation. We'll discuss abortion, healing, authentic masculinity, some of the concepts Scott talked about, being men being emasculated in this day and age. We'll talk about other issues that plague men today. And it's an open forum. There's no registration. You can dip in, dip out, come, go, stay for the whole thing, whatever you want to do. But we're creating it to provide an opportunity for men to just have a conversation, right? We're in a largely virtual world right now. Many of the people on this screen, I recognize your faces. We've talked. I've never seen you in person, and yet we have a connection and a relationship. And so in that world, what we're trying to do is create a space where men can just pull up a chair and have a chat in a way that is non-judgmental, really non-conforming. We'll start each session with a little bit of an idea, a lesson type thing, something to think about, and then we'll just open it up and let guys share what they need to share without filling out a bunch of forms or anything like that. So we're excited to get going, up and running on the 2nd. The team at Support After Abortion has put a lot of energy into this. Christian based. No, it's wide open. Right. Somebody asked I'm sorry, I just happened to glance down and see if the Base Camp's Christian based. As the facilitator of it, I will lead it with Christ-like intent to the best of my ability. But It is not a space for me to preach at folk. So there'll be guys that maybe they'll share something they've learned or have gained from their Christian faith. There may be guys who share something they've learned from walking through the woods. I don't know. We're going to leave that up to the guys. I just got a note that Ron's back on. Ron, you want to try to mute yourself? Anyway, base camp rolling out May 2nd. So if you know anybody that would be interested or benefit from that, send them on in. Ron still can't be heard. He is here. And he's unmuted somewhere. I'm sorry, y'all. We're having trouble. I really want you guys to have an opportunity to hear from Ron. How do we link to Basecamp? That's a great question. Hopefully one of the team members on here who is way smarter than me with tech, which is all of them, will can put a link for Basecamp. And yes, we do have a graphic. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. We'll get information out to you about that. I don't know if Ron's going to be able to get back on. So if anybody can, one of the team members can help me, let's start sorting questions. If we have them for Scott or Tim or anybody that wants to jump in here, y'all feel free to type them in.
Or they can go ahead and come off mute and ask you directly, Greg.
Oh, or as Ivy said, just come off mute and let it rip. And then if we get Ron back, we'll bring him on and let him share. Mary, I see your hand up.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and ask my question. Thank you so much. This is wonderful and so much needed. I hear this all the time that we need more resources and help for men. A few of the things I've heard from people all over the country about challenges is that men, different from women, right? And they are a little less likely to want to go in groups, or it's a little bit harder for them to share openly about their emotions or their experiences. And I'm just curious about any thoughts, either Tim or Greg or others who've experienced men's ministry, like how you kind of overcome that. Is the messaging, the outreach, the awareness, the advertising about what you're doing, or even the very activities that you offer? Like, for example, I've heard that men, one diocese had a way of, the man actually built something. He built I think it was a crib for someone else for a pregnancy center, and they devoted, it was his way of sort of giving back and sort of contributing. And it helped him as he built this, he prayed. And so could you just explore maybe some of the differences and some of the successful healing strategies and messages that help men?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question. What I've learned, and Tim, I'll get your opinion as well, but men respond to other men sharing their stories. That's one of the first things. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Yeah, so the vulnerability thing is huge. That was very hard for me. I hid behind a tough guy for so long. So to be vulnerable, I'm a barber. So, talking about emotional stuff to men at the barber shop is doesn't happen. You know what I mean? But I forced myself to do it. And it's amazing, once I started, and not even just super sensitive or anything, just, hey, talking in conversation. Yeah, I made some major mistakes in my life, and I can pinpoint where they got, where they turned my life around and what it was. And then they'll ask more, and just conversation, just like being vulnerable and admitting flaws and mistakes I made, and then but telling them with hope, like that I'm healing, or that I changed my life. And then when they hear that, they want to know how and why, and that just opens up a whole new conversation there.
Yep, that's brilliant. Couldn't agree more. Scott, What's your take on that?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, because my years as an educator, anytime I had a disciplinary issue with a boy, I would walk with them elbow to elbow, and that's when they would open up. A lot of times, my female teachers would say, look at me in the eye. I want to I want to talk to you. And then the kid's looking elsewhere because I think better when I'm not looking, directly in the eyes. So I think we have a heart as men for how men are going to react. Now, before I was kind of highlighting, I didn't want to negate the value of women in this process, but someone had a chat question. In a small group setting, I think it's really important for the male to male interaction to happen. And, both, sides should hear, male and female should hear, we're sorry for your loss. No one has probably ever even acknowledged that they had a loss in their whole life. They haven't maybe even acknowledged because they've been told that, for years and years, this wasn't a baby. It wasn't even a living thing. And they know in their heart it was. So to hear, I'm sorry for your loss, and just start the conversation goes a long way, as Tim pointed out. And then I think the follow-up has to be, hey, by the way, no pressure, but we have resources. I have this small group that I could offer you. Go to supportafterabortion.com. There's all sorts of resources, but first it's just the conversation that I think is what males need.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, you don't want to go too crazy, like all the bells and whistles and this program and go here to this church and that. Like, guys don't want to do that. They want just a conversation,
I agree. And that's where it has to start.
Initially, right.
Yeah.
Ron's saying the host muted him, but let's see if we can unmute him.
Yes, we muted him because it's just coming through as static when he speaks, Ron. So Ron, please check your email. We've emailed you a phone number to call. If you could try calling that number, we might have a better connection. But when you keep trying to speak, it's coming through as like a reverb. Yeah, so it's just coming through as reverb for us. I'm so sorry. Call the number that's in your email, Ron. Ron is also going to be featured on our TV show on Maria Vision on Monday. So we will be able to share his story with you if we're not able to connect today. And we'll email that out to everyone. But please, Ron, just check your email and call the number, see if maybe that works for you.
And hopefully it does. We're going to keep an eye on him here. And to y'all's points in answer to Mary's question, I literally stumbled into abortion recovery 14 years ago. And it was only because I shared a story in a men's group about my abortion, and it had nothing to do, the group had nothing to do with abortion. And yet when I shared it, a couple more guys came forward. And my first thought, and Reg posted something about this in the chat a minute ago, my first thought was, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. That's weird. What do I do with that? Right. So I met with my pastor the next day, and the process started, but it only came from me scared to death sharing, and then somebody coming forward and saying, hey, yeah, me too, brother. So I think that's where it begins, the conversation, right? Anybody else have a question?
Well,
You can put it in the chat. You can come off mute.
I have a comment, right?
Just a thought as far as inviting guys in when they're hesitant to join groups. If you approach them as, we need your input in the group, as opposed to you need help, you get a lot further.
Yep, agreed. That's a good point, Tom.
Hi, Gregory.
Yes.
This is Mike. I was wondering how much that weighed you down about what happened to you. I mean, did it interfere with your life or drastically, or?
Yeah, in ways that I wasn't even conscious of until I found healing. It impacted everything. Choices I made, things I did, avoidance behaviors. It impacted the way I parented when my wife and I started having kids when I was 30. It really, nothing went untouched, Michael, nothing. And
Mhm.
Tim, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you recognize what to do? I mean, you know, it happened a long time ago and you're moving on. And how'd you recognize where the pain came from?
Well, the thing is, and I'm not splitting semantical hairs here, but I never moved on. I just moved. I'm in Indiana, so forgive the basketball metaphor, but I played life on defense, right? You never win a basketball game playing on defense. So I guess to shortly answer your question, Michael, when I was in that men's group, this voice in my head said, "Hey, share your story about the abortion." And my first thought was, no, we're not doing that. I'm in a church group at my church with guys I go to church. There's no way I'm sharing this story. And the voice kept bugging me. And so finally I did. And it wasn't until I shared that and started looking into healing that I started making the connection, that I started seeing that, hey, this really did impact my life. I thought I had just been living my life, going through and problems and life happened. And I didn't know for a long time that it was related. And I don't know. I think, Tim, you can probably validate that as well, right?
Well, yeah, remember when I called you? I think it was step 3, after step 3, and I said, I had this moment. I'm in the Publix parking lot, and it just hit me like from all different directions, everything that happened bad in my life that I'm shameful about happened within 2 months after I had the abortion. And it all just spider webbed. And I just kept stuffing and stuffing and stuffing to the point where it had to come out. It had to. Well, it didn't have to. I mean, I believe by the grace of God, he wanted it. He wanted me to deal with it. He didn't want to see me suffering anymore, you know? So that's when it all happened with me moving to Florida and getting the help with the alcohol. But the root of the problem was the abortion. I had no idea.
And do you feel like you had to get some recovery around the alcohol before
had
you
to-
could address?
I had to get rid of the obsession of drinking and the cloudiness and all of that to go deeper. It just, to go look and more hindsight and to dig deeper. To get to the root of the problem, I had to remove the alcohol obsession first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey,
Yeah.
Greg,
Yeah, Chris.
I want to piggyback on what Tim is saying, and because I have alcohol abuse history, and that history coupled with recovering from abortion are just intertwined.
Yes.
And what I found with dealing with my guys, by the time I get to them, they've reached their tipping point. And Tim would recognize I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
So whenever an individual gets to that point, then man, they're ready to do something different to get different results. And indeed, I guess the phenomena is when a guy walks into his first AA meeting, you're looking at a room full of people and you want to say, "Oh, you too? I thought it was just me." So, and I use that in my abortion wound counseling to establish that foundation with whoever I'm dealing with early on, and it creates a credibility foundation to move forward. So, and it's interesting to find somebody else who has alcohol recovery and abortion recovery, because there's incredible parallels there. And
Mhm.
good on you for bringing that up. So,
And Chris, I appreciate you sharing that. And because you work with guys, there a lot of times, like Tim said, the abortion triggers whatever behaviors, right? Drugs, alcohol, sexual acting out, whatever the thing is. And so by the time a man comes for healing, excuse me, I had construction going on another part of my house, and I think the dust will get me. But by the time a man comes for healing, it's almost like we have to clean off the layers of whatever he's been doing to avoid the pain before we can actually get to the pain, right?
And I want to add one other thing. And it's a recurring theme in these conversations. How do we reach men? And, you know, in my little book, I came up with there's 51 million men with abortion experience in the United States. And how do we reach them? And like Greg has said, and others have said, we never get into an opportunity to speak, that men don't come up afterwards and just pretty much unload. And so the message that I get with this is first off, be bold. Don't be afraid to talk about it. And we can't change what we don't acknowledge. And I've just found whenever it's brought up, people come forward, and we get introduced to guys who really need help. Those guys who come up after a speech or a talk, those are the guys that are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And man, they are ripe for healing. So keep talking about it. And you know, there's more on that subject that we'll maybe cover on another meeting or so, but how we reach more men, but just be bold and keep talking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, y'all, Chris is also on the men's task force at Support After Abortion, and he works with a lot of guys one-on-one in his own right. And that perspective is absolutely spot on, Chris, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Well, I wish it was an auditorium full of guys, but right now it's my lot in life is doing it one-on-one.
One life at a time. Hey, Greg, one more reminder. I just, as Chris was talking, the stat that 50% of all abortions today that happen are repeat abortions. So, you know, I think we're all pro-life on this call, and then we have to realize healing is going to help prevent future abortions. I can't worry about politics. I can't worry about what they're going to do in that realm, because it's not going to solve it. Abortion is going to be with us, unfortunately, for a long time. And so 50% of every abortion that happens today is also going to be within 2 years, they're going to have another one. So this conversation we're having for men and women, support for abortion, is going to help prevent future abortions. And to Chris's point, one life at a time, one baby at a time is all we can do. One man, one woman at a time.
And to your point, Scott, helping men step up and do the right thing and make the right decisions, I believe will help limit the number of repeat abortions. For man to stand in the gap and say, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing. Hey, look, gang, I would love to continue this thing. It is now 1 o'clock and we are going to have to go. I want to thank all of y'all for being here and hanging with us. Scott, thank you for answering questions, talking with us, and sharing. Tim, thanks for sharing your story, brother. You and I will talk a little bit later. Ron, dude, sorry we didn't get it worked out, but I'll see you in a minute. And again, Ron will be on Support After Abortion's program on Maria Vision. So if you want to hear his story, look forward to that. And we'll see you then. Again, thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you, and I wish you a great day.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much, everybody.